Welcome to Talking with Yourself, a podcast designed as a place to learn new things, talk about navigating the world, dealing with mental health, and just life in general. I'm your host, Sam Preston, and thank you so much for being here. Now, let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. And I am very excited for this episode. I get to announce my very first guest on this podcast.
So hello everyone, thank you for having me on today's podcast, Sam. My name is Nathan Reid, also known as the Dietitian King, and I am a registered dietitian specializing in sports nutrition. I was born and raised in Ottawa, but I moved to Guelph to complete my Master's of Applied Nutrition at the university here. And since then, I started my career in sports nutrition, where in the fall, I just recently joined the Kitchener Rangers Hockey Club as their sports nutritionist, and I also recently registered with the College of Dietitians of Ontario. I'll be working with athletes across Canada through nutrition practice, so I'm very excited for that. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you guys about healthy eating habits in sports and share tips to help athletes fuel their performance.
Well, first off, congratulations becoming a registered dietitian. That is huge. Working with Rangers hockey sounds like super interesting. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so first, the way I got the job, I reached out to a bunch of OHL teams across Ontario. So I reached out to Kitchener's team, Ottawa, Guelph, and Kitchener came back to me with an opportunity to serve as their team nutritionist for the season. So I did an interview with a few members of their management, including their GM, head athletic trainer, and their director of sports nutrition. And then I ended up getting the job with them. And a couple of the things I do with them, I was able to do a nutrition education session with the players. So I went over to the arena about a few weeks ago and I did a presentation to the players, showing them how to properly fuel themselves before, during, and after games. And so I was able to work with the players more directly. As well, I'm also on staff as a nutrition consult. So if ever a player needs some help with the nutrition goal that they have, whether they want to put on weight or lose weight, the team can reach out to me and I can help with that player and work with them one-on-one to help them achieve any goals that they have. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity, especially because I want to work one day in the NHL as a dietitian. So it's a great first step in my career.
Oh yeah, absolutely gets your foot in the door. That honestly sounds so cool to just be working with them, especially because nutrition is such an important aspect of an athlete's performance that I feel like actually not a lot of people realize how big your eating habits affect your performance as an athlete. What exactly, or I guess how exactly would you describe sports nutrition?
Yeah, so sports nutrition is definitely like an aspect of nutrition overall. It kind of specializes in that field of sports, of course. So it's the application of sports or nutrition science to optimize an athlete's performance, recovery, and overall health. So it focuses on tailoring food intake to meet the demands of training, competition, and recovery based on the sport the athlete plays. So it can be a team sport like hockey or soccer or football, or maybe a solo sport like marathon running, swimming, et cetera, et cetera. And so we consider factors like the type of sport they're playing, training intensity, and individual goals. And then it's all about fueling the body efficiently while supporting long-term health and peak performance.
Yeah, and I guess it also kind of depends if they're playing more than one sport as well. That would kind of change their needs and everything like that. So essentially kind of using knowledge about nutrition and things like that to kind of improve the athlete's performance, maximize kind of the outcome of what they do and how they play and everything like that.
Yeah, so like nutrition, it directly impacts an athlete's energy levels, which is very important when they're playing a sport. You want to be energized so you can compete at your highest ability, as well as the recovery and also focus, so that mental side as well. So for example, you want to consume carbohydrates before exercise, which provides your body with energy for high intensity sports as well as endurance activities, while you also want to consume protein afterwards to aid in muscle repair and recovery. As well, proper hydration supports endurance and prevents fatigue, as well as consuming micronutrients like iron, calcium, magnesium are essential to supporting oxygen transport, for example, as well as bone strength. So by understanding these principles, athletes can fuel their bodies strategically, avoid burnout, as well as perform at their best, which is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, for sure. So I've talked a bit in my last episode just about eating disorders and having a good relationship with food. It's a bit of a fine line when you're an athlete, I find, between watching what you eat while also not restricting or enabling any bad habits around food. I think that's definitely a tough thing to kind of do. Do you have any tips on how athletes can use their knowledge about nutrition to improve their performance while also not kind of walking that fine line over towards restriction or any sort of disordered eating?
Yeah, for sure. So healthy eating habits start obviously with focusing on balance, variety, and consistency. Those are the three things I would focus on there. So you want to aim to include a mix of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which are your macronutrients. So you want to consume those in larger amounts, as well as you have your micronutrients that you'll consume in smaller amounts when it comes to having your meals. So typically you would have 3 meals a day, sometimes more if you're an athlete who has to have that extra meal in order to put on extra weight, for example. It all depends on what your nutrition goals are. But definitely want to focus on listening to your body's hunger as well as your fullness cues. So to develop a healthy relationship with food, you want to avoid rigorous rules or unnecessary restrictions, as these can lead to stress and unhealthy eating behaviors, which you obviously want to avoid, especially if you're an athlete, because food is important. So you don't want to restrict yourself from food when you need it in order to perform. And so instead, you want to view food as fuel and enjoyment, and remember that eating it for performance includes flexibility. So you want to make sure that you're not restricting certain foods from your diet just because they may be unhealthy, but of course you want to consume them in moderation, because we're all humans and we all have those cravings. So it's good to have something like a guilty pleasure food every once in a while just for enjoyment. But of course, ultimately, you want to consult a registered dietitian like myself, so athletes can build safe, personalized nutrition plans that support both their physical and mental well-being.
Yeah, so you mentioned kind of consulting with a registered dietitian. How usually can you kind of go about finding one? Obviously, yourself, and through this, people can find you and utilize your knowledge and resources. Kind of how do people go about even just finding the right dietitian for themselves, do you think?
Yeah, I think most people will probably find a dietitian through a referral from their family doctor. So maybe they'll go into an appointment with the doctor and they maybe have some issues or some problems that they're going through that they bring to their doctor. Maybe they go in for a physical checkup and their doctor notices they maybe lost a large amount of weight or put on a large amount of weight. It really depends based on how that conversation goes. Maybe the doctor will refer them to a dietitian in the community and they can connect with the dietitian that way. If you're an athlete, depending on which level of sports you play, if you're playing obviously a pro level sport, you probably have a dietitian on staff. If you're playing maybe more recreational or a lower level of sport, your team coach or head athletic trainer may refer to you, or we may refer to you to a dietitian in the community who specializes in sports nutrition, and contact them that way. But I would say dietitians who specialize in sports nutrition are very less or more scarce versus a dietitian that works in a clinical setting. And so sometimes it is hard to find dietitians in that area of expertise, but if you're able to reach out to someone who has that knowledge, they're usually able to help you get that information.
Yeah, good thing is nowadays we have the internet.
Yeah.
It's such a large platform that you can probably even just go Google sports dietitians and, however many will pop up. I liked what you said earlier about food as fuel. I love that sentence. I don't even know how to explain it, but I love just the concept of viewing food as the equivalent of gasoline to a car. Your car can't run on nothing. You can't do things and you can't go places if your car doesn't have gas in it. And your body's kind of the same way. The more you fuel your body, the more you're able to do, the more experiences you're able to have. And in a sports term, the longer you're able to go in a sport, the better you're able to train, the stronger, faster, whatever. You're kind of able to utilize food as your fuel. What do you think are some myths that a lot of people might have about fueling their body within a sport?
So I would say one common myth that a lot of people hold is that carbohydrates lead to weight gain. and should be avoided in one's diet, especially by athletes trying to stay lean for their sport. But in reality, carbohydrates are the body's primary source of energy, particularly for high intensity sports like hockey and soccer and all of those sports that are like a lot of stop, go, stop, go. And so, with the addition of endurance sports as well, like if you're a marathon runner or a swimmer, you definitely want to have those carbohydrates in your diet as well. And so, restricting them can hurt your performance, which is something you don't want as an athlete. You want to be able to compete at your best. So another common myth that a lot of people hold on to is that expensive supplements are essential for improving athletic outcomes. So while supplements can be helpful in certain situations, most athletes can meet their nutritional needs through a balanced diet. And so supplements should only be used under professional guidance. They're not necessarily required in order to meet your macronutrients and your micronutrient needs. That can be done through just eating 3 meals a day with snacks in between. And so supplements are only needed if maybe you need to put on extra weight, you need to take extra protein. So like protein powder, for example, is something you may add to your diet, but ultimately you can achieve your goals without supplements. And lastly, a third common myth that a lot of people believe is that consuming more protein always leads to better results. So while protein is critical for muscle repair and recovery, consuming excessive amounts of protein won't necessarily yield extra benefits and actually could displace other important nutrients. And so you don't necessarily want to overconsume macronutrients in your diet as well. You want to consume enough to meet your needs and also meet your body's needs as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you a question about that because we know not eating enough definitely affects your performance. But is there such thing as too many nutrients?
Yeah, I would say like your body obviously needs a certain level of nutrients in order to function each day. So you want to make sure you're consuming whatever that amount may be based off your sex, based off your age, based off how much calories you're burning each day through your workouts. And so there definitely is a threshold amount that your body needs, but ultimately once your body receives all the nutrients it needs from the food that you're ingesting, excess will just be discarded, whether it's through your urine or through the other way. And so there definitely is, I would say, a limit that your body needs. And so at that point, you're just basically just wasting those nutrients from the food that you're consuming. So again, working with a dietitian, they're able to kind of figure out what your needs are, how much protein you need to be eaten each day, how much carbs, how much fat would also help with the calorie intake. And then, yeah, doing your best not to necessarily overconsume because you're just going to be wasting those nutrients, which you don't want to do. And obviously, food can be very expensive these days. So you don't necessarily overeat as well, just for the sake of doing so.
So it absolutely sounds like even if you're not an athlete, I think it's important every once in a while to just consult a dietitian, see how you're doing, where you're at with things like that. But for sure with athletes, it's definitely a complicated thing, especially when you don't know a lot about nutrition. It's kind of hard to look at it and say, oh, like maybe this thing will give me a little more energy. Maybe I should be having like 600 extra glasses of protein before a game or something like that. And I feel like you need that person to just be like, slow down. Let's look at this. How much energy are you putting out? How much should you be taking in? And things like that. I think, honestly, every athlete, no matter your level, should go through some form of like presentation or consultation with some form of nutritionist, just so they're even like a little more aware. Like, I feel like growing up, I don't think I consulted a dietitian. I was in sports a lot growing up. I don't think I consulted a dietitian until I was probably like 13, 14. So I went through a good amount of years of sports, almost knowing nothing about nutrition and essentially just knowing like, yeah, like food will give you energy, and beyond that, like knowing nothing. So I definitely think people should almost be like mandatory for athletes to go through that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Even like myself growing up, like I did track and field for numerous years and played like other sports, not necessarily like in a professional organized league, but just for fun, like hockey and sports like that nature. And like I never consulted a dietitian, didn't really know a dietitian existed until I got to university and what they do for people in general. And then like having those specialists like sports nutritionists or registered sports dietitians who work with athletes and seeing what they do and how they help athletes achieve their nutrition goals. So it was definitely eye-opening to myself as well when I figured out that people in that area of work exist,
Yeah.
and then choosing to become one myself.
Yeah, which is crazy. So we talked a bit about the myths. Do you have any facts that you find a lot of people don't know or you think are important that people should know?
Yeah, I would say athletes often overlook the hydration aspect of their diet. So even mild dehydration, for example, can significantly impair one's endurance, focus, and overall performance in their sport. And so timing your meals and snacks is another game changer as well. I would think that people often, or athletes often, avoid is like knowing when to eat your meals, not just eating them, but knowing like how you're eating them and compared to when you're working out, when you're playing your sport. And so like consuming carbohydrates before exercise provides your body with energy, which will include in protein as well afterwards to help with muscle recovery. So knowing when to eat a good amount of carbs versus, less than that amount of carbs in your meals versus eating more protein, especially like after a workout or a game of some sort in order to help with that muscle repair. So the timing of your meals is very important as well. And then, yeah, so overall recovery nutrition is especially important. And like eating small snacks within 30 minutes of finishing an activity can be or make a big difference to your recovery as well. And another crucial fact is that I would say nutrition is definitely highly individual. It's not like one size fits all. There's no universal plan that works for everyone. So tailoring your nutrition to your sport, body, and goals is definitely key to maximizing your performance and long-term health.
Yeah, it always makes me mad to see the like big fad diets going around where everybody's trying to be on the same diet. And it's like everybody's body is different. Nobody is going to require the exact same thing as someone else. So I know, like, from friends I've talked with and kind of people in the eating disorder recovery community, a lot of their troubles stemmed from trying to do some sort of diet they found online or some form of like exercise, whatever the word I'm looking for is, but like just stuff they found online that they tried to tailor to themselves and it obviously didn't work out very well. And with that led to disordered eating habits and things like that and just kind of that downward spiral. So I definitely agree that it's very individualized and almost no two people are going to be exactly the same. What about kind of on the topic of being individualized and how people's bodies need different things? What about dietary needs in terms of people who have like restrictions, people perhaps who are vegan or maybe celiac or things like that? Can you still like be a successful athlete and successfully kind of have those proper nutrients when you have restrictions like that?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I would say many like high performing athletes, especially those who play pro sports, for example, Lewis Hamilton, who's an F1 driver, Chris Paul, who's a NBA legend, the Williams sisters who play tennis, Serena and Venus, like they all follow either a vegan or vegetarian diet. So there's a lot of like high performing athletes who play pro sports who are able to be successful in their sports, as we all know, following a vegan, vegetarian, or some sort of restrictive diet in terms of certain foods that they eliminate for various reasons. But they definitely can have incredible success in their sports. And so the key when you're following a vegan diet, for example, is proper planning to ensure like all nutrients are met from the foods that you consume. So for example, plant-based athletes need to pay special attention to their protein because they're not getting protein from animal products. They're going to be relying on foods such as beans, lentils, tofu, and quinoa, as well as other nutrients that they may be lacking, more so like iron, calcium, and vitamin B12, because those are also found a lot more in animal-based proteins. And so you want to make sure you're getting those nutrients other ways. For example, nutritional yeast is a good one to get that vitamin B12 into your diet. So again, working with a dietitian is highly beneficial to create a balanced and effective eating plan that aligns with both the dietary preferences and the athlete's performance goals. So with the right strategy, dietary restrictions won't limit your potential as an athlete. So it's definitely doable to achieve success if you follow like a vegan diet, for example.
With stuff like I myself am pescatarian, so I won't eat meat, but I'll eat fish. And I remember when I first decided I wanted to go pescatarian, a big thing that a lot of people were telling me was like, take these supplements and take these supplements. Do you like have to be taking supplements when you're kind of like restricted like that?
Yeah, I would say it definitely depends on like what you're lacking in your diet. Like if you're taking supplements, for example, like omega 3, or yeah, let's say omega 3, but you're a pescatarian, you're already getting that from the fish. So it's not like you eliminated fish from your diet where you then need that specific nutrient. So again, it depends on the foods that you're eliminating, and how you're able to supplement them or replace them with other foods. And if you're not able to do that, then I would say supplements would be necessary in order to make sure you're meeting the needs that your body requires for that nutrient in order to not prevent any other complications or things of that nature. Like for example, myself, I was vegan for almost 2 years, and one thing I found was the meeting my protein needs was definitely difficult over time because I eliminated all animal proteins and byproducts from my diet. So I was mainly getting protein from like tofu and other like beans, lentils, and things like of that nature. But over time, I noticed my hair, for example, was starting to like thin out and falling out a bit as well. And I noticed it was probably related to not getting enough protein and other like micronutrients like biotin, for example, in my diet. So I kind of reverted back to more of a flexitarian diet, I like to call it, where I basically consume everything that I did before, but I don't consume chicken for more ethical reasons, not necessarily for preference, because I did grow up eating chicken. But I did notice that, yeah, you can definitely start noticing some changes in your body or negative changes in your body where you're not getting certain nutrients. So it's good to consume supplements in order to avoid that from happening, which I didn't do at the time. But
But you learned,
yeah,
which is the important thing. Yeah, I think it's important to look out for those little hints too, where maybe you are following a diet for ethical reasons or things like that, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's not the best for your body. I did actually start out vegetarian, and I kind of noticed that too. I was slowing down in sports and things like that, and kind of compromised at the time. Obviously, I was living with my parents who were mostly cooking for me. So, kind of compromised with them that we'll reintroduce fish, and I still kind of have that ethicality of not eating meat. You mentioned like hair falling out, like that's kind of a sign that you're not getting the proper nutrients. Another one is you're kind of cold all the time, things like that. Can you kind of just off the top of your head think of anything else like to look out for, just to kind of as those little hints that's like, oh, maybe like I should kind of pay more attention. Maybe I'm not getting the proper nutrients or anything like that.
yeah, I think even if like you're consuming like 3 meals a day, like you're getting the carbs, you're getting the protein, you're getting the fats in your diet, whether it's animal protein or plant-based protein. But let's say like you wake up after sleeping 8 9 hours and you're still feeling tired throughout the day, you're still feeling sluggish throughout the day. There's definitely some sort of metabolism thing going on where you're not getting the proper. You may be like missing out on a certain nutrient in your diet that's preventing you from feeling no more upbeat or energetic as you go throughout your day. So that would be one of the things you can probably look out for. With the hair, like again, like fingernails is another thing. Like if your fingernails start becoming like more brittle as well, that's another sign of like maybe you're lacking biotin in your diet. Like the hair and fingernails kind of have that similar correlation there. Those are a couple that come off the top of my head in terms of some early signs and symptoms of you may be missed out on a nutrient. I think a lot of it comes down to energy levels, and yeah, just some of those signs you'll see in your body as well.
Yeah. Like I remember noticing when I was struggling with my eating disorder, I slowed down a lot, especially in hockey. Like I was having trouble keeping up for just like the normal laps you do around the ice before you go for a water break. And that one kind of clicked in my head of like, oh, I've slowed down. And so I think it's really important, you just in your everyday life to kind of pay attention to how you're going through life, how you're feeling, how tired are you and things like that. And granted, you did mention sleep. Nutrition is not the only thing that obviously affects performance. Like you have to be getting a good amount of sleep, a healthy work life or sport life balance of sorts. So it's not to say that, if you're slowing down in a sport, it has to be your eating, it has to be your nutrition, but just those things to look out for, to kind of be mindful of, and maybe take a step back and reflect on things you're doing, you know, how your habits are in life, and maybe one thing needs a little tweak and it'll be okay and stuff like that.
I think another thing to look out for as well is that hydration piece. So sometimes you want to make like sometimes you're not able to go to the bathroom when you want to. So like you may be feeling constipated, you may be experiencing like stomach cramps and stomach pain and that sort of thing. So sometimes it could also be related to what you're consuming and maybe what you're not consuming. Like that fiber aspect as well is definitely helpful when it comes to digestion. So you maybe not get enough fiber in your diet, and you're able to, or you're unfortunately having like trouble using the washroom. And then yeah, with the urination thing, a great way to test if you are dehydrated, because maybe you're not getting enough hydrate, like you're not hydrated enough throughout the day. If you find yourself like consuming less water, for example, one easy way to figure out if you are dehydrated is by looking at the color of your urine, and if it's darker in color, like a dark yellowish color, golden color, almost like apple juice, then that's a clear sign that you are dehydrated. And so an easy way to fix that is obviously consuming more water throughout the day. And a lot of people would say like that's one of the harder things for them to do, even though it's pretty simple in nature in terms of just drinking water. But it's definitely plays an important role, not just like in your life as an athlete, but just in your life overall as a person, and that well-being aspect as well. Water definitely has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I have heard that in terms of hydration, if you're drinking when you get thirsty, it's already too late.
Yeah, so I would say like when you wake up in the morning, it's good to like drink a couple of glasses of water just to hydrate yourself, because your body is obviously working while you're sleeping. And so you may want to just help start off your day like in a good way, just getting a couple glasses of water down, just so you're a bit more refreshed and ready to go throughout your day. But I would say, yeah, for sure, if you're feel like you're dehydrated, whether you're going throughout your day or you're playing a sport, then you're definitely past the point of dehydration, or getting to the point where you are getting more dehydrated than being hydrated. So you definitely want to consume the water throughout the day, or sports drinks if you're playing a sport, in order to maintain that hydration, and so you don't fall into that area of being dehydrated.
Yeah, I'm the type of person that if I have something in my hand, I will just like without even thinking be drinking it all day. So like I found if I just fill up a giant like a giant water bottle and just kind of carry it around with me, within like an hour or so it's like empty.
Yeah.
That's how I got around that. I used to be very bad with my hydration too back in like high school, and that affected my sports as well. So just started carrying around a little water bottle, and if it's in my hand, I'm drinking it.
Yeah, it's usually easier to want to drink water if you have it visible in front of you, versus like having to maybe get up from your desk and then go downstairs to the kitchen, grab a water bottle from the fridge or water from the tap, and then go back to what you're doing. It's easier if you have like a large bottle of water with you to kind of take with you throughout the day, and then you have that to sip on, and yeah, it's always there for you when you need it, and then you don't necessarily fall into dehydration early.
Yeah. Have you seen those like water bottles that have the like writing on it of like 7 a.m. like you finish it by this line and you finish the next line at like 9 a.m. or something like that? Are those like an actual like good size? Do you know? I feel like they're pretty big, but I've never actually tried it.
Yeah, like I'm not exactly sure what the exact amount of water like someone's supposed to consume throughout the day. Like it definitely depends. Again, like if you're male versus female, if you're an athlete versus someone who's just a student going to class. Usually, yeah, those bottles of water, I do notice them sometimes, like on people's social media and or in person. Is a good size to drink. I don't know if one bottle is enough, or one of those bottles is enough, maybe two. But a clear sign of just knowing if you're hydrated is like when you go to urinate, if your pee is clear, for example, like you're hydrated. So a lot of times it's just kind of assessment, like self-assessment, seeing if you're drinking maybe one of those bottles a day, is that enough for you? Maybe by the end of the day you find like when you go to urinate, your pee is a bit dark in color, so maybe you're not getting enough. So it's kind of adjusting as you go, again based off like what you're doing that day in terms of activities. So for everyone it's different, but normally around 2 liters of water more or less is what people obviously or usually suggest. But again, it depends on the person and what they're doing.
Yeah. And as much as people like to joke about waking up for that 3 a.m. glass of water, if you're doing that, you're not getting enough. As funny as it is to go, oh yeah, that nice 3 a.m. glass of water in the dark in the kitchen, so good. It's like, well, yeah, because you're dehydrated. So you have a book. I would love to talk about that because that is so cool. So your book is, what's the title again?
So it's a nutrition guide that I created. It's called Fueling Victory, the Quad Ball Nutrition Guide. So it's dedicated to quad ball athletes, sport formerly known as Quidditch for those listening who don't know.
Yep.
But I've been playing the sport called quad ball since I was 18 years old. So back in 2015, when I went to Queen's University, they had a quad ball team or Quidditch team at the time there, and I got into the sport. Not necessarily being a fan of Harry Potter, but just wanted to stay active while I was studying there. And so, as a team sport, also being able to have that social aspect as well, and making friendships with players on the team. So it's a sport I've been playing basically ever since then on various teams at various schools, depending where I was studying at the time. And so the latest team that I play on right now is the Guelph Griffins quad ball team, as well as in the summer I play summer quad ball, which is a part of a league called Major League Quad Ball. And so previously I played for the Ottawa Black Bears team when I was living in Ottawa, and then I moved to Guelph this past year. So I played for the Toronto Raiders team. And in collaboration with the league, I got the position of league nutrition specialist. And so one of the tasks that I set out for myself this past season was to create a nutrition guide dedicated to quad ball athletes, because I felt like there was a gap missing in terms of that knowledge not necessarily being related to quad ball athletes, just because the sport is so new and not too many people outside of the community really know about it. And so I released that nutrition guide, and it's available right now on the Major League Quad Ball's website. And so really what it is that I applied my nutrition knowledge from my master's program to create a resource aimed at enhancing the performance of athletes in this unique sport. And so my goal was to fill the gap in nutrition guidance, specifically tailored to quad ball, so equipping athletes who play the sport with tools they need to fuel their success both on and off the pitch.
Yeah. Quad ball is a real sport, guys. Look it up. It's everywhere. The amount of people that I'll mention quad ball to and they'll be like, no, that's not a real thing. I'm like, it's like all over the world. But definitely, yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of stuff out there. There's like, you can look up so many things in terms of hockey nutrition and basketball and all these other sports, and there's like nothing for quad ball. So it's definitely good to have something out there. Mm-hmm. Just off the top of your head, what are some of the things that you kind of touch on in that book?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to focus on kind of giving the athlete enough information, like if they didn't understand the nutrition aspect and how nutrition plays an important role in sports, how they can navigate that and kind of build up their knowledge as well as providing them information. So as you go through the nutrition guide, it explains why nutrition is important. So some of those aspects related to like physical performance, mental focus, injury prevention, as well as what are healthy eating habits. And so eating a variety of foods throughout the day, honoring your hunger. So again, listen to your body, that aspect of healthy eating, eating a balanced plate, and then providing like a model of like what a balanced plate looks like in terms of, fruits, vegetables, carbs, protein, healthy fats. So giving some examples to athletes who may not be as knowledgeable in terms of what they should be eating and, how they should fuel themselves when they're training before a game, during a series, and after a series. And so providing information related to those aspects, as well as in the sport, we do a lot of traveling. So sometimes we stay at hotels and we have to eat breakfast when we're on the go. And so I also provide some examples of what you could eat at the hotel, what you could eat at a fast food restaurant. So for Canadian listeners, they know Tim Hortons is a very popular spot to go to. So kind of some of those healthier options to eat there, or maybe things you can pick up at the grocery store. And so kind of go through the whole different aspects of nutrition and also touch on that hydration aspect as well. And provide enough information for athletes to take from and to apply to their own lives in order to perform to the best of their ability when they play games.
Do you have any tips for like eating between games? Because they are decently long games and it's all on foot. Like it's a lot of energy output. And for those of you who don't know, quad ball is a full contact sport as well. So it's a lot of tackling, a lot of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Do you have any kind of tips on just quick little like snacks in between games or like even little alternatives? Because I know Like I've even played with some people who can't eat between games. It kind of makes them nauseous. Like any alternatives in that aspect too?
Yeah, so like during a game, like when you're on the sidelines, you may be feeling a bit hungry, or maybe you're feeling a bit faint sometimes. So things that you could eat that are easy to digest, because for example, myself, I don't really eat that much during a series or during a tournament. I usually eat like a big meal before and afterwards, but I'll sometimes snack on something easy that's to digest. And so, for example, things like granola bars or cereal bars are good to have. Fresh fruit, fruit snacks, salted pretzels, things like that are easy to consume and kind of have a little bit of as you go throughout the day, because they provide you with the essential nutrients that you need in order to maintain high performance levels. So like you're getting the carbs to help replenish the glycogen stores as you deplete them as you play a series of games throughout the day, as well as you're getting some protein as well if you're eating something, for example, like if you have like a bit of a lunch break and you are someone who likes to eat a bit of a bigger meal, you can have maybe like a chicken wrap or some sort of bagel with like peanut butter, for example. So you're getting a mixture of carbs and protein there, and then some like easy protein sources that you could eat, or like maybe like a cheese string or a Greek yogurt or some sort of like nuts and seeds, things like that are easy to consume for almost anyone, as long as you don't have an allergy to nuts, for example. But things like that can definitely help get you throughout the day, providing you through energy, and as well as helping like support muscle recovery afterwards, with that protein as well.
What about sports drinks? Do they actually do anything for you in terms of replenishing or energy levels?
Yeah, so like when it comes to like hydration, like often people say like drink water, like that is the number one source of hydration, whether you're an athlete or not, because your body is made up majorly of water, and so you need to make sure you're consuming enough water in order for your body to properly function. But when it comes to sports drinks, like it obviously has that water aspect to it as well, but it also has like sugar in the form of glucose, as well as like micronutrients like sodium and potassium, because when you're playing a sport, you tend to sweat depending on the environment that you're in. And then so you're going to be losing a lot of electrolytes through sweat, as well as when you go to urinate. And so things like sodium and potassium, calcium, magnesium are micronutrients that your body needs in order to function, but you're going to be losing some of them through playing the sport. So sports drinks helps replenish those as well. So when it comes to like drinking them versus not drinking them, usually like if you're playing a sport that's about an hour long or longer, that's when they do come in handy, because at that point your glycogen stores are probably depleted or starting to get depleted, and so you need some sort of energy source to keep you going throughout the competition that you're playing in. If you're playing in a tournament, you kind of need that extra energy boost to get you throughout the day, especially for someone who doesn't eat as much during a tournament, because the breakfast that you would have beforehand isn't necessarily enough to get you through that whole tournament. So sports drinks come in handy to provide that carbohydrate aspect, with the sugars, and then getting those micronutrients like potassium and sodium, which play a key role in like muscle like constriction and all that. So they definitely have their role in terms of a sport. So I definitely do recommend them if you're playing a sport that takes place over a longer period of time, especially in a tournament setting. But it's not necessarily needed for someone who like I guess like goes to the gym for like a half hour, 45-minute workout, and they're like drinking a sports drink while they're working out. That's not necessarily needed in that environment.
And I kind of assume, again, I might be wrong, but energy drinks and like caffeinated drinks kind of do the opposite, where they are not as helpful during sports.
So this may be a bit controversial, because what I
Okay.
do when I go to, for example, like a quad ball practice or a tournament, I always drink a Monster in the morning, but it's the Zero Ultra one, so it doesn't have any sugar in it or really any calories. I think it's like 5 or 10 calories, but it's more so just for the caffeine aspect. So growing up, I usually never drank caffeine. Even like when I was going through school, I wasn't someone who had to like drink like copious amounts of coffee throughout the day to stay awake and to study late at night. So I don't think I've developed a tolerance to caffeine. So I think whenever I do consume something with caffeine, it does have an effect on my body. And I did do some research a few weeks ago where there is benefits to drinking caffeine when you're playing high intensity sports like quad ball. And so there is a bit of like a boost to your focus, for example, is one aspect that caffeine does provide. So I do consume it for that reason, and other health beneficial reasons. But In terms of the energy, like if you're consuming an energy drink that has, 60 grams of sugar in it, you're probably going to get a sugar rush and then crash right afterwards. And that's something you don't obviously want to experience when you're playing a sport, because you're going to be low energy. And then at that point, you're increasing your chances of getting injured or just not feeling well enough to play. And so if you are going to drink a energy drink, I would think you want to focus more so on the caffeine aspect, if it does help you in that regard. And sometimes as well, a lot of energy drinks have like high levels of micronutrients, which are good, but sometimes there's like 500% worth of your daily amount. So you kind of want to be mindful as well when it comes to that. You're not drinking them no more than what they recommend, which is usually like one a day. So for that, it's more so consuming in moderation, but it's not necessarily needed. It's more so maybe like a preference thing and sometimes a superstition for athletes like myself.
So essentially, caffeine is not the worst thing you could have, or any energy drinks aren't the worst thing you could have before or during or after. I don't know if you'd want to have it after a game. I feel like that would kind of defeat the purpose. But it's not, it's essentially not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world, but again, like you want to prioritize eating food
Oh, yeah.
in order to energize. So, and also well, water, and when you're playing a sport, like sports drinks to hydrate. So like there's definitely better options out there, but it's not the end of the world if you drink an energy drink beforehand, particularly the ones with like no sugar in them if you're already getting carbohydrates from the food.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of was hoping this would go without saying, but I did want to mention it just to everybody listening that, like, yes, fueling yourself during your sport and tailoring your diet to your sport is important and obviously has a lot of benefits. But at the very end of the day, you yourself should come first. And if you are sacrificing a healthy relationship with food just for your sport, as much as it may suck, I know as an athlete, it absolutely sucks to take time away from a sport. But if you are sacrificing kind of that healthy relationship with food, first and foremost, put yourself first, take a step back from that sport for a little bit, and kind of just come back when you have a bit of a healthier relationship with food. So as much as we've been preaching the balanced diet and everything like that, at the end of the day, if you are sacrificing that for your sport, I don't think it's worth it. So I have been trying to end all my podcasts by just giving the listeners an affirmation or some sort of message to go throughout their day with. And I would actually love for when I do have guests on for them to be the ones to come up with that closing message. So if you have an affirmation for people, I would love to hear it.
So for all listeners out there, one affirmation I would give to you guys is number one, food is fuel, but it's also joy, culture, and connection. So you definitely want to embrace balance, but also be kind to yourself and trust the process as you navigate your health journey. A lot of times we get too focused on the foods we eat. And like I said, or we kind of talked about it earlier about, is this a good food to eat? Is this a bad food? So like that good versus bad aspect of eating is definitely not something you want to focus on too much, because it can definitely cause, issues or problems that you may fall into. Like, for example, you may undergo an eating disorder, and kind of navigating that battle between, what you should and shouldn't be eating. I think if you go into eating as something, or eating foods as eating everything in moderation, obviously there's foods that are better for you, but there's also foods that you enjoy eating just because it brings you joy or happiness, as well as when it comes to, food culture as well, and the way that it brings people together. Sometimes it's more than okay to go out with friends, family to eat, in terms of, maybe you're celebrating, your graduation or a birthday. It's more than okay to go out and eat unhealthy foods or bad foods. And yeah, I think it's just always good to prioritize your own health and well-being, being kind to yourself, trusting, what your body's telling you when it comes to, overall, just say, just enjoy food for what it is. It's fuel. It's something that tastes good. It's things that you can, it's something that you can consume, obviously, with friends, family, in order to have that connection with others and to celebrate special occasions. And so it shouldn't be something that necessarily distracts you or brings you down, and something you should battle with, but something you should embrace, something you should be more than happy to enjoy. And it's an aspect of being human. So
That was beautiful. I need to get food as fuel like tattooed on me or something because I love it. But also the like it's joy, culture. Yes, absolutely. It's so much more than just something that keeps you going. Well, thank you so much for coming on this. You were honestly the perfect first guest to have. It was great talking with you, and I think I even learned a good few things. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is through social media, specifically on Instagram at the Dietitian King. So the dietitian spelled Dietian, not with a C, king. As well as you can also email me if you want to reach out potentially to like book a consultation or just to talk about maybe a nutrition goal that you have or a nutrition issue that you're going through that you want to talk to a professional about. So you can also reach me via email at the dietitian king, all one word, at gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to get in touch with you.
Yep. And for both quad ball and non-quad ball players alike, give the book a read. I think it's something interesting and you definitely learn from it. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. I hope you got something out of this. We talked about a lot, so I'm sure you did. And keep that affirmation in mind as you go about your week. Bye-bye.